Speaker, and I also rise to support this motion that this House condemns the WA Labor government for neglecting the safety of West Australian community. And I thank the member for Kalamunda for giving us all the opportunity to speak on this and raise the issues from our electorate. So, yeah, do appreciate it. So I rise today to support the motion because the safety of our community, particularly women and children, is too important to ignore. I don't raise these matters lightly, and I don't come to this place looking to make political noise. That's not my style. But when something isn't working, it needs to be fixed. And right now, the family and domestic violence system in regional West Australia is not working. In my electorate of Warren-Blackwood, there is not a single women's refuge. Not one. Not in Manjimup, not in Bridgetown, not in Denmark, not in Augusta, not in Margaret River, nowhere. The closest options are in Albany, Bunbury or Busselton. That's if there's space. And if a woman in crisis can't get there, that's a dangerous assumption. Outreach support exists, but it's thin, stretched and mostly delivered from outside the electorate in places like Pemberton, Northcliffe and Walpole. There is no town-based support at all. Deputy Speaker, leaving a violent relationship is one of the hardest, most dangerous decisions a person can make. It takes enormous courage, often after years of fear, control and isolation. To do that without a safe place to go, without knowing if there is a bed, a counsellor or even a lift to get there is almost unimaginable. Sorry. And yet, that is the reality for too many women across Warren-Blackwood. They are being asked to take that step with no safety net beneath them. I've had women quietly tell me that they've stayed in violent homes because they simply had nowhere to go. Others have said that they don't call for help because they know the local police are already stretched and can only do so much. These are the kind of stories that stay with you. As a man, I'll be honest. I feel it's not really my place to speak on behalf of women, and I don't want to come across as insincere or as though I could ever fully understand what they go through. But as the local member, it is incumbent upon me to stand here and make sure the voices of some of the most vulnerable people in our community are heard. Those often who stay quiet, who live in the shadows, out of fear or simply because they know the support isn't there when they need it the most. If the women of Warren-Blackwood don't feel supported, if they don't feel safe in their own homes, then something fundamental has failed, and it's on all of us in this place to put that right. This isn't just a safety issue, it's also a resourcing issue, particularly for our police. When there's no local refuge, police are the ones who step in. And here's an example that's been explained to me. To officers respond to a domestic violence call out, they need to transport the woman to a safe refuge. But on the way, they've got to go to hospital to make sure that they're safe. If they head to Busselton or Bunbury to a domestic violence shelter, if there's space available. If not, they've got to book a motel room or find a place for them to stay. That turns into sometimes like a seven-hour round trip. And then when they return, that's beyond their shift hours, and then they must be stood down. The town is left with a reduced police presence, and already stretched neighbouring stations are forced to cover. That's not sustainable, and it's not fair on our officers or the community. And it's not just happening in Warren-Blackwood, it's happening right across regional WA. WA police are being stretched to capacity. In the absence of proper support services, they are being left to carry the load of an entire broken system, one that is missing the community infrastructure it should have in place. To make matters worse, we're seeing a knock-on effect across the justice system. Because of high contractor costs, the Department of Justice has started relying on auxiliary police officers to provide court security in regional WA. But these officers were previously responsible for watch house duties, including cell extraction and detainee management. To fill that gap, the system is now pulling in protective service officers and then backfilling those roles again with general duties officers. The result, fewer police on the front line, fewer police in our towns, more frontline officers doing jobs that they weren't trained or recruited to do, while violent incidents increase and support services remain missing. It's not sensible and it needs to stop. Police are being asked to carry the weight of social failures far beyond their remit. It's not fair, it's not efficient, and it's not safe. And the numbers bear this out. In 2024, the number of assault victims in WA increased by 10% to 47,045, the highest in 30 years. 2/3 of those assaults, over 30,000 cases, were family and domestic violence related. Sexual assaults rose by 9% to 3,721 victims, also a 32-year high. 1 in 3 of those incidents were family domestic violence related. And tragically, in WA last year, there were 55 homicide victims. 40% of them, 22 people, died as a result of family and domestic violence. The pressure is also showing up in our health system. 1,172 reported cases of family domestic violence were recorded in our outer regional WA. In remote areas, 991 cases were recorded. In very remote WA, 1,665 cases were recorded. And that's just a staggering number. These are not isolated problems. This is a system under serious strain. Homelessness services are also overwhelmed. According to WACOS, more than 28,000 requests for homeless support went unmet in 2024, up 39% since 2017. Women and children escaping family violence who are homeless for more than 7 months increased from 1,250 to 1,330 in the past year alone. And all of this is happening while the cost of crisis response has jumped 43% over the 5 years, much of it driven by family and domestic violence. Despite rising costs and growing need, the early intervention and local services just aren't there in the regions. We also know when these risks increase. Just last week, while much of the country paused for the Melbourne Cup, our first responders were bracing for something very different. Cup Day is not just a public holiday, it's one of the most dangerous days of the year for women. Calls to 1800 RESPECT spiked 17%. Police expect up to 20% more family and violence reports. During the state of origin, domestic assaults have risen by 40%. Alcohol, gambling losses, heightened emotions, they amplify the risk. And when we know these risks, we should plan accordingly. But in places like Warren-Blackwood, where no crisis support exists, we're not planning at all. We're leaving people exposed. The Premier has spoken about strong budget surpluses, but those figures don't mean much to a woman that has nowhere safe to go. They don't help the police officer who has to choose between responding to a local call out or driving a victim 3 hours to safety. This system isn't just under pressure, it's buckling. And it's regional families who are feeling the weight. So here's a suggestion on what needs to happen. We need a women's refuge in Warren-Blackwood, probably 2, so that there's not hours away. We need town-based family domestic violence outreach programs in Bridgetown, Nannup, Walpole and across the electorate. We need to lighten the load on our local police who are being pulled into service gaps that are never meant to fill. And we need to invest in prevention and early intervention so women and children don't end up in crisis in the first place. And finally, we must enforce the protections that already exist. In WA, the rate of family domestic violence related violence over order breaches rose from 161.6 to 186.3 per 100,000 people in just 1 year. That's a jump from 4,005 to 4,796 breaches. Only the Northern Territory and Queensland have higher rates. The number of offenders proceeded against by police for family domestic violence offenders jumped from 7,844 to 9,923, a 26% increase. These are warning signs and they should not be ignored. Deputy Speaker, this isn't about headlines. It's about recognising the people in regional WA deserve the same safety and support as anyone else. I'll admit I feel uncomfortable standing here as a man speaking on the issue. It's not my place to speak for women, and I would never claim to understand their experiences. But it is my responsibility to ensure that the voices of the most vulnerable in our community are heard. The women and the children who often stay silent, who live in fear, and who know that the support simply isn't there. If those voices remain unheard in this place, then we've all failed them. I believe this is fixable, but it starts with acknowledging the gap and then having the courage to act on it. And I commend the motion to the House.
Member for Albany.